Human reproduction is sexual reproduction that results in human fertilization to produce a human offspring. It typically involves sexual intercourse between a sexually mature human male and female. 1. During sexual intercourse, the interaction between the male and female reproductive systems results in fertilization of the ovum by the sperm to form a zygote. 1. These specialized reproductive cells are called gametes, which are created in a process called gametogenesis. 2. While normal cells contain 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs, gamete cells only contain 23 single chromosomes, and it is when these two cells merge into one zygote cell that genetic recombination occurs, and the new zygote contains 23 chromosomes from each parent, giving it 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs. 2. The zygote then undergoes a defined development process that is known as human embryogenesis, and this starts the typical 9-month gestation period that is followed by childbirth. 1. 3. The fertilization of the ovum may be achieved by artificial insemination methods which do not involve sexual intercourse. 4. Assisted reproductive technology also exists. Biological and legal requirements. In order for human reproduction to be achieved, an individual must have undergone puberty first, requiring ovulation in females and the sperm arc in males to have occurred prior to engaging in sexual intercourse, or achieving pregnancy through non-penetrative means. Before puberty, humans are infertile, as their genitals lack reproductive function, only being able to discharge urine. Legal factors also play a vital role in the achievement of human reproduction. A minor under the age of consent cannot give legal consent to sexual intercourse or artificial alternatives to reproduction, the former case of which is liable to have the older party charged with statutory rape, depending on jurisdictions. 5. 6. Even for minors above the age of consent, comprehensive sex education advises both consenting parties to use contraception to avoid both sexually transmitted diseases and early, unplanned/unwanted pregnancies. Pregnancy in girls under the age of 15 is especially discouraged due to their reproductive systems having yet to reach full maturity. Anatomy. Male reproductive system. Further information: male reproductive system. The male reproductive system contains two main divisions: the testes where sperm are produced, and the penis which discharges the sperm as semen. This is known as an ejaculation. In humans, both of these organs are outside the abdominal cavity. Having the testes outside the abdomen facilitates temperature regulation of the sperm, which requires specific temperatures to survive about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius less than the normal body temperature, i.e., 37 degrees Celsius. In particular, the extraperitoneal location of the testes may result in a twofold reduction in the heat-induced contribution to the spontaneous mutation rate in male germinal tissues compared to tissues at 37 degrees C. 8. If the testicles remain too close to the body, it is likely that the increase in temperature will harm the spermatozoa formation, making conception more difficult. This is why the testes are carried in an external scrotum rather than within the abdomen. They normally remain slightly cooler than body temperature, facilitating sperm production. Female reproductive system. Further information: female reproductive system. The female reproductive system likewise contains two main divisions, the external genitalia and the internal genitalia. The ovum meets with the sperm cell. A sperm may penetrate and merge with the egg, fertilizing it with the help of certain hydrolytic enzymes present in the acrosome. The fertilization usually occurs in the oviducts, but can happen in the uterus itself. The zygote then becomes implanted in the lining of the uterus, where it begins the processes of embryogenesis and morphogenesis. When the fetus is developed enough to survive outside of the uterus, the cervix dilates and contractions of the uterus propel it through the birth canal, which is the vagina, and thereby gives external life to the newborn infant. This process is called childbirth. The ova, which are the female sex cells, are much larger than the spermatozoon and are normally formed within the ovaries of the female fetus before birth. They are mostly fixed in location within the ovary until their transit to the uterus, and contain nutrients for the later zygote and embryo. Over a regular interval known as the menstrual cycle, in response to hormonal signals, a process of oogenesis matures one ovum which is released and sent down the fallopian tube. If not fertilized, this egg is flushed out of the system through menstruation. Process of fertilization. Basic processes involved. 1. Maturity. 2. Spermatogenesis and oogenesis. 3. Vaginal intercourse with internal fertilization. 4. Zygote. 5. Embryonic development. 6. Childbirth. 7. Adolescence. Coition of a hemisected man and woman, circa 1492, by Leonardo da Vinci. Human reproduction normally begins with copulation, though it may be achieved through artificial insemination, and is followed by 9 months of pregnancy before childbirth. Pregnancy can be avoided with the use of contraceptives such as condoms and intrauterine devices. 9. Copulation. Main article: Sexual intercourse. Human reproduction naturally takes place as internal fertilization by sexual intercourse. During this process, the man inserts his erect penis into the woman's vagina and then either partner initiates rhythmic pelvic thrusts until the male ejaculates semen, which contains sperm, into the vaginal canal. The sperm and the ovum are known as the gametes, each containing half the genetic information of the parent, created through meiosis. 2. The sperm, being one of approximately 250 million sperm in a typical ejaculation, travels through the vagina and cervix into the uterus or fallopian tubes. Only 1 in 14 million of the ejaculated sperm will reach the fallopian tube. The egg simultaneously moves through the fallopian tube away from the ovary. One of the sperm encounters, penetrates and fertilizes the ovum, creating a zygote. Upon fertilization and implantation, gestation of the fetus then occurs within the uterus. 10, 11, 12, 13. Chance of fertilization by menstrual cycle day relative to ovulation. 14. Pregnancy rates for sexual intercourse are highest during the menstrual cycle time, from some 5 days before until 1 to 2 days after ovulation. 15. For optimal pregnancy chance, there are recommendations of sexual intercourse every 1 or 2 days. 16. Or every 2 or 3 days. 17. Studies have shown no significant difference between different sex positions and pregnancy rate, as long as it results in ejaculation into the vagina. 18. Alternative methods. As an alternative to natural sexual intercourse, there exists artificial insemination, where sperm is introduced into the female reproductive system without the insertion of the penis. 4. There are also many methods of assisted reproductive technology, such as in vitro fertilization, where one or more egg cells are retrieved from a woman's ovaries and co-incubated with sperm outside the body. The resulting embryo can then be reinserted into the womb of the woman. Citation needed. Pregnancy. Main article: Pregnancy. Pregnancy is the period of time during which the fetus develops, dividing via mitosis inside the uterus. During this time, the fetus receives all of its nutrition and oxygenated blood from the mother, filtered through the placenta, which is attached to the fetus abdomen via an umbilical cord. This drain of nutrients can be quite taxing on the mother, who is required to ingest slightly higher levels of calories. In addition, certain vitamins and other nutrients are required in greater quantities than normal, often creating abnormal eating habits. Gestation period is about 266 days in humans. While in the uterus, the baby first endures a very brief zygote stage, then the embryonic stage, which is marked by the development of major organs and lasts for approximately 8 weeks, then the fetal stage, which revolves around the development of bone cells while the fetus continues to grow in size. 19. It is estimated that about 3 to 5% of couples are infertile and the fecundity of couples is around 30% for each menstrual cycle. Labor and birth. Newborn infant and mother. Main article: Childbirth. Labor is separated into 4 stages. The first stage involves latent phase and active phase separated by the dilation of the cervix for 6 to 10 centimeters. The second stage is the pushing stage. The third stage involves the delivery of the placenta. And the last stage is the contraction of the uterus. 21. Once the fetus is sufficiently developed, chemical signals begin the process of birth, which begins with the fetus being pushed out of the birthing canal. The newborn, which is called an infant in humans, should typically begin respiration on its own shortly after birth. Not long after, the placenta eventually falls off on its own. The person assisting the birth may also sever the umbilical cord. Discovery of mechanism. While most ancient human societies believed that sexual intercourse was necessary for reproduction, the reason some sex did not result in children, and the mechanism by which mating produced children were not understood. The theory of preformationism was popular in ancient Greece and Christendom for centuries. Because they are too small to see with the naked eye, it was only after his invention of the microscope that Antony van Leeuwenhoek discovered spermatozoa in 1677. Mitosis and meiosis were not discovered until the late 1800s. Heterosexuality. Hetero redirects here. For other uses, see hetero, disambiguation. Straight men redirects here. For the comedy stock character type, see straight man. This article is about heterosexuality in humans. For heterosexuality in other animals, see animal sexual behavior. For the album, see heterosexuality, album. Sexual orientation. Gender symbols, for colors, .svg. Sexual orientations. Asexual, bisexual, heterosexual, homosexual. Related terms. Androphilia. and gynephilia, bicurious, gray, asexuality, demisexuality, non-heterosexual, pansexuality, queer, heterosexuality. Research. Biological, birth order, epigenetic, neuroscientific, prenatal, hormones, demographics, environment, human, female sexuality, human male sexuality, Kinsey scale, Klein grid, queer studies, sexology, timeline of sexual orientation and medicine. Animals. Animal sexual behavior, non-reproductive sexual behavior in animals, homosexual behavior in animals. List. Related topics. Romantic orientation, situational sexual behavior. Category. Heterosexuality is romantic attraction, sexual attraction or sexual behavior between people of the opposite sex or gender. As a sexual orientation, heterosexuality is an enduring pattern of emotional, romantic, and/or sexual attractions to people of the opposite sex. It also refers to a person's sense of identity based on those attractions, related behaviors, and membership in a community of others who share those attractions. Someone who is heterosexual is commonly referred to as straight. Along with bisexuality and homosexuality, heterosexuality is one of the three main categories of sexual orientation within the heterosexual-homosexual continuum. 1. Across cultures, most people are heterosexual, and heterosexual activity is by far the most common type of sexual activity. Scientists do not know the exact cause of sexual orientation, but they theorize that it is caused by a complex interplay of genetic, hormonal, and environmental influences, and do not view it as a choice. 5, 6, 8. Although no single theory on the cause of sexual orientation has yet gained widespread support, scientists favor biologically based theories. There is considerably more evidence supporting non-social, biological causes of sexual orientation than social ones, especially for males. The term heterosexual or heterosexuality is usually applied to humans, but heterosexual behavior is observed in all other mammals and in other animals, as it is necessary for sexual reproduction. Terminology. Terminology of homosexuality. Hetero comes from the Greek word tau epsilon rho omicron, heteros, meaning other party or another, 11, used in science as a prefix meaning different, and the Latin word for sex, that is, characteristic sex or sexual differentiation. The current use of the term heterosexual has its roots in the broader 19th century tradition of personality taxonomy. The term heterosexual was coined alongside the word homosexual by Carl Maria Kurtbini in 1869-13. The terms were not in current use during the late 19th century, but were reintroduced by Richard von Krafft-Ebing and Albert Moll around 1890-13. The noun came into wider use from the early 1920s, but did not enter common use until the 1960s. The colloquial shortening hetero is attested from 1933. The abstract noun heterosexuality is first recorded in 1900. The word heterosexual was listed in Merriam-Webster's New International Dictionary in 1923 as a medical term for morbid sexual passion for one of the opposite sex. However, in 1934 in their second edition unabridged it is defined as a manifestation of sexual passion for one of the opposite sex, normal sexuality. In LGBT slang, the term breeder has been used as a denigrating phrase to deride heterosexuals. Hyponyms of heterosexual include heteroflexible. The word can be informally shortened to hetero. The term straight originated as a mid-20th century gay slang term for heterosexuals, ultimately coming from the phrase, to go straight, as in, straight and narrow, or stop engaging in homosexual sex. One of the first uses of the word in this way was in 1941 by author G. W. Henry. Henry's book concerned conversations with homosexual males and used this term in connection with people who are identified as ex-gays. It is now simply a colloquial term for heterosexual, having changed in primary meaning over time. Some object to usage of the term straight because it implies that non-heteros are crooked. Demographics. Demographics of sexual orientation. In their 2016 literature review, Bailey et al. Stated that they expect that in all cultures the vast majority of individuals are sexually predisposed exclusively to the other sex, i.e., heterosexual, and that there is no persuasive evidence that the demographics of sexual orientation have varied much across time or place. Heterosexual activity between only one male and one female is by far the most common type of sociosexual activity. According to several major studies, 89% to 98% of people have had only heterosexual contact within their lifetime, but this percentage falls to 79 to 84% when either or both same-sex attraction and behavior are reported. A 1992 study reported that 93.9% of males in Britain have only had heterosexual experience, while in France the number was reported at 95.9%. According to a 2008 poll, 85% of Britons have only opposite-sex sexual contact, while 94% of Britons identify themselves as heterosexual. Similarly, a survey by the UK Office for National Statistics (ONS) in 2010 found that 95% of Britons identified as heterosexual, 1.5% of Britons identified themselves as homosexual or bisexual, and the last 3.5% gave more vague answers such as don't know, other, or did not respond to the question. In the United States, according to a Williams Institute report in April 2011, 96% or approximately 250 million of the adult population are heterosexual. An October 2012 Gallup poll provided unprecedented demographic information about those who identify as heterosexual, arriving at the conclusion that 96.6%, with a margin of error of plus or minus 1%, of all U.S. adults identify as heterosexual. The Gallup results show. Society and culture. History of human sexuality and human mating strategies. An intimate heterosexual couple. A heterosexual couple, a man and woman in an intimate relationship, form the core of a nuclear family. 50. Many societies throughout history have insisted that a marriage take place before the couple settle down, but enforcement of this rule or compliance with it has varied considerably. Symbolism. A heterosexuality symbol. Heterosexual symbolism dates back to the earliest artifacts of humanity, with gender symbols, ritual fertility carvings, and primitive art. This was later expressed in the symbolism of fertility rites and polytheistic worship, which often included images of human reproductive organs, such as lingam in Hinduism. Modern symbols of heterosexuality in societies derived from European traditions still reference symbols used in these ancient beliefs. One such image is a combination of the symbol for Mars, the Roman god of war, as the definitive male symbol of masculinity, and Venus, the Roman goddess of love and beauty, as the definitive female symbol of femininity. The Unicode character for this combined symbol is U+26A4. Historical views. There was no need to coin a term such as heterosexual until there was something else to contrast and compare it with. Jonathan Ned Katz dates the definition of heterosexuality, as it is used today, to the late 19th century. According to Katz, in the Victorian era, sex was seen as a means to achieve reproduction, and relations between the sexes were not believed to be overtly sexual. The body was thought of as a tool for procreation, human energy, thought of as a closed and severely limited system, was to be used in producing children and in work, not wasted in libidinous pleasures. Katz argues that modern ideas of sexuality and eroticism began to develop in America and Germany in the later 19th century. The changing economy and the transformation of the family from producer to consumer resulted in shifting values. The Victorian work ethic had changed, pleasure became more highly valued, and this allowed ideas of human sexuality to change. Consumer culture had created a market for the erotic, pleasure became commoditized. At the same time, medical doctors began to acquire more power and influence. They developed the medical model of normal love, in which healthy men and women enjoyed sex as part of a new ideal of male-female relationships that included an essential, necessary, normal eroticism. This model also had a counterpart, the Victorian sex pervert, anyone who failed to meet the norm. The basic oppositeness of the sexes was the basis for normal, healthy sexual attraction. The attention paid the sexual abnormal created a need to name the sexual normal, the better to distinguish the average him and her from the deviant it. The creation of the term heterosexual consolidated the social existence of the pre-existing heterosexual experience, and created a sense of ensured and validated normalcy within it. Religious views. See also religion and sexuality. According to the creation myth of the Abrahamic religions, Adam and Eve are the first human couple and the ancestors of all humanity. The Judeo-Christian tradition has several scriptures related to heterosexuality. The book of Genesis states that God created women because it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him, 52, and that, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh, 53. For the most part, religious traditions in the world reserve marriage to heterosexual unions, but there are exceptions including certain Buddhist and Hindu traditions, Unitarian Universalists, Metropolitan Community Church, some Anglican dioceses, and some Quaker, United Church of Canada, and Reform and Conservative Jewish congregations, 54, 55. Almost all religions believe that sex between a man and a woman within marriage is allowed, but there are a few that believe that it is a sin, such as the Shakers, the Harmony Society, and the Ephrata Cloister. These religions tend to view all sexual relations as sinful and promote celibacy. Some religions require celibacy for certain roles, such as Catholic priests. However, the Catholic Church also views heterosexual marriage as sacred and necessary. 56. Heteronormativity and heterosexism. See also, ex-gay movement, heterosexuals organized for a moral environment, and National Association for Research and Therapy of Homosexuality. This image is often used on straight pride t-shirts. Heteronormativity denotes or relates to a worldview that promotes heterosexuality as the normal or preferred sexual orientation for people to have. It can assign strict gender roles to males and females. The term was popularized by Michael Warner in 1991. 57. Feminist Adrienne Rich argues that compulsory heterosexuality, a continual and repeating reassertion of heterosexual norms, is a facet of heterosexism. 58. Compulsory heterosexuality is the idea that female heterosexuality is both assumed and enforced by a patriarchal society. Heterosexuality is then viewed as the natural inclination or obligation by both sexes. Consequently, anyone who differs from the normalcy of heterosexuality is deemed deviant or abhorrent. 59. Heterosexism is a form of bias or discrimination in favor of opposite-sex sexuality and relationships. It may include an assumption that everyone is heterosexual and may involve various kinds of discrimination against gays, lesbians, bisexuals, asexuals, heteroflexible people, or transgender or non-binary individuals. Straight pride is a slogan that arose in the late 1980s and early 1990s and has been used primarily by social conservative groups as a political stance and strategy. 60. The term is described as a response to gay pride. 61, 62, 63. Adopted by various LGBT groups in the early 1970s or to the accommodations provided to gay pride initiatives.